Your brain is constantly listening to chemical messages from the rest of your body. But what happens when those messages are hormones? Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to take this really fascinating, almost cinematic journey into the human mind to discover how our biology literally shapes our reality. For the longest time, people thought of the brain as this isolated command center, just kind of sitting up there alone. But modern science has totally shattered that illusion. So today, we're diving deep into the beautiful, incredibly complex ways our biological chemistry influences our neurology.
To really answer that question, we have to look at how sex hormones possess both organizational and activational effects on the brain. We're basing this whole exploration on 3 comprehensive neuroimaging reviews that have basically synthesized decades of scientific observation. We're going to see exactly what happens inside the human mind when it's exposed to shifting levels of specific hormones. Because as it turns out, the brain is not just some static receiver. It's a highly dynamic organ. It responds, adapts, and changes its function based on the chemical weather systems of the body.
Chapter 1. The Chemical Messengers.
So, to understand this dynamic communication, we first need to identify the specific messengers traveling through our neural networks. We're looking closely at 3 primary sex hormones: estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone. And here's the thing. These chemicals don't just hang out in the body managing reproduction. They actively cross the blood-brain barrier. And once they're inside, they interact directly with vital neurotransmitter systems. We're talking serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. By tweaking these pathways, these hormones directly influence our major functional domains. They shape how we learn, how we process really intense emotions, and even how we experience motivation and reward.
Chapter 2. Neuroplasticity and Brain Structure.
Let's look at how these hormones physically shape the architecture of the brain itself. Because this isn't just a matter of, changing our mood for a moment. It's about physically altering the pathways of the brain. The absolutely crucial point here is that the brain possesses incredible neuroplasticity. We have organizational effects, which refer to how hormones help build and wire the brain's baseline structure over a lifetime. But then we have activational effects. These are the real-time temporary changes in neural activity. This dual mechanism basically means that as hormone levels rise and fall, they are literally rewiring and activating different neural circuits on the fly.
Chapter 3. The Corticolimbic Landscape.
But where exactly is this hormonal weather having the most impact within the brain's vast landscape? Well, by using fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, researchers can actually watch regions light up in real time. And they found that hormones heavily modulate the corticolimbic system. This includes the amygdala, which is basically our emotional alarm bell, and regions of the prefrontal cortex, like the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, and the inferior frontal gyrus, the IFG. These frontal regions are the ones governing complex thought, attention, and emotional regulation. Even the hippocampus, which is absolutely vital for memory and learning, is deeply intertwined in this hormone-responsive network. When hormone levels shift, the way these specific regions are recruited shifts right along with them.
Chapter 4. The Menstrual Cycle's Impact.
To really see this neuroplasticity in action, researchers turned to one of the most natural, recurring biological rhythms in humans, the menstrual cycle. By tracking individuals through different phases, scientists can observe the brain's response to natural hormonal fluctuations. And that number, 77, represents the distinct neuroimaging studies analyzed in just one of the multimodal reviews we're looking at today. By the way, multimodal just means that they looked at the brain using several different types of advanced imaging techniques to get a really complete overlapping picture. So, we're not talking about a single small experiment here. This is a comprehensive, data-driven evaluation of decades of brain imaging designed to map these exact changes.
Across those 77 studies, researchers observed the brain structures of 1,304 naturally cycling women. This massive data set allowed them to definitively track how endogenous, meaning internal, naturally occurring, ovarian hormone fluctuations affect neural circuits. By staging the menstrual cycle very carefully, they could watch the corticolimbic regions adapt as estrogen and progesterone levels naturally ebbed and flowed. And while the menstrual cycle is a fantastic monthly model to study, it's super important to note that massive hormonal shifts also rewrite brain activity during pregnancy, and they profoundly alter the neural landscape as the brain responds to changes during menopause.
All this data naturally leads us to a pretty vital question. How do different concentrations of hormones change the way our corticolimbic landscape responds? Like, if the brain is listening to these chemicals, what exactly does it do when the volume is turned all the way down versus when it's cranked all the way up?
The research actually reveals a scattered but very distinct functional recruitment across brain regions when you compare a low hormonal milieu against a high one.
A low environment occurs during the early follicular phase, which is just after a period begins and estrogen is lower. We compare that to a high environment, which happens during the luteal phase, so after ovulation when hormones really surge, or when introducing combined oral contraceptives. The studies showed that these different chemical environments diversely affect the response of the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. It fundamentally shifts how the brain delegates its emotional and cognitive processing tasks.
Chapter 5. Exogenous Hormones and Clinical Conditions.
Beyond natural, endogenous cycles, we also have to look at what the science says about external or exogenous hormones, as well as specific clinical sensitivities. Scientists can better understand unique individual brain sensitivities by impartially examining fMRI data from 3 distinct groups: women with premenstrual dysphoric disorder, or PMD, which is a severe emotional reaction to natural hormonal shifts, alongside users of combined oral contraceptives and individuals undergoing high-dose cross-sex hormone therapy for gender dysphoria.
What we really learn from looking at these diverse groups is that people respond very differently to the exact same hormonal changes. But why is that? Well, the data suggests that individual variations in receptor sensitivity, underlying genetics, and your baseline brain wiring basically dictate your unique responses. This is why a drop in hormones that causes just a subtle cognitive shift in one person might cause a profound, debilitating emotional shift in someone with a highly sensitive system like PMDD. It proves that these interactions are incredibly complex and deeply individualized biological responses.
Chapter 6. Modulators, not controllers. As we start to wrap up this explainer, we really need to separate proven scientific evidence from hypotheses or absolute claims. In the realm of hormones, it is so easy to fall into the trap of thinking our biology completely dictates our destiny. But the data tells a much more nuanced story. While the evidence of brain modulation is definitely mounting, the researchers explicitly note that current findings represent only initial evidence. We still need a lot more well-powered, multimodal neuroimaging studies to completely map out these precise neural mechanisms. And this is vital. It means we absolutely cannot claim that hormones completely control emotions, personality, or behavior. They are a major factor, for sure, but they're just one part of a massive, beautifully interconnected neurological system.
Which leads us to the ultimate takeaway from all of this data. If you remember one thing from today, let it be this. Hormones do not simply control the brain. They interact with complex neural networks, changing how the brain responds to the world around us.